Good afternoon to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to our tropical weather outlook video for today, Friday. Happy Friday to you, June 27th, 2025. Let's start off with the National Hurricane Center homepage. And today we're going to be talking about the Atlantic because lo and behold, we have another area of interest that the National Hurricane Center actually added last night. And now the question will be, when is Barry going to form as per the title card page? When is Barry going to form in the Atlantic? When are we going to get our next development to occur in the Atlantic? Because it looks like that opportunity might be coming up pretty soon in the Bay of Campeche. It's a small area of interest, though. It's a very slight window because the National Hurricane Center has tagged this area at a low chance of formation within the next 48 hours and the next 7 days. And they say that an area of disorganized showers and thunderstorms over the northwestern Caribbean Sea and the adjacent land areas is expected to move west northwestward into the Bay of Campeche Saturday or Saturday night, where an area of low pressure could form, and subsequently development is possible on Sunday or Monday if the system remains offshore of Mexico, meaning it depends on where this develops and how it develops, and if this is able to remain over water in the Bay of Campeche, that it'll maybe take advantage of a short window of opportunity to potentially develop and maybe become a quick named storm before it moves inland at the beginning of early next week. And I mentioned it briefly yesterday on the models that there was a quick spin up that at least the Euro showed of some sort of energy trying to come together quickly before it moved inland over Mexico. And seemingly other models do show that as well. I think the GFS has it and the Euro ensembles. So not just the Euro operational, but its ensemble members also have some sort of signal of development in the Bay of Campeche. So I guess the National Hurricane Center, as a result, decided that it was appropriate to highlight an area of interest in the Bay of Campeche. So we're going to be talking about now, when is Barry going to develop, and could this area indeed be when Barry develops? But obviously, in the Eastern Pacific, too, we also have another area of interest to talk about there. And this will also have some sort of impact on what happens in the Bay of Campeche, too, especially, namely, on how quickly does this develop into a tropical system will have an impact on what happens in the Bay of Campeche. And I'll show you how that all plays out in a moment. But here is the National Hurricane Center for Invest 95E. This is what this area of interest is in the Eastern Pacific. They give this a 50% chance of formation within the next 48 hours, and in the next 7 days, they give it a high chance of 90%. So they're very, very aggressive on potential for formation within the next week here in the Pacific. So they're very likely to get something out of this system. Just depends on how quickly does it develop, especially since this will be close to the Mexican coastline, which will have a downstream effect on potentially conditions for whatever does try to get going in the Bay of Campeche. Here's a satellite look of how the Atlantic looks in general. You could see, especially here in the Western Caribbean, where there's a lot of shower and thunderstorm activity. And this is the area that we're going to have to watch as it moves over the Yucatan Peninsula and then into the Bay of Campeche to see how much does it develop. I think it is associated with a tropical wave. In fact, I'll actually bring up here the tropical wave map from the National Hurricane Center. This is a surface analysis of the Atlantic and the Pacific, and you could see in the Western Caribbean, there's actually two tropical waves here, very interestingly. But I think this wave, especially here, just off the coast of Central America, I think this is the wave that is generally associated with what we'll need to watch in the Bay of Campeche, with whatever might try to develop. And then, meanwhile, across the Eastern Atlantic, there also are some other tropical waves as well. And then you could see that we have a low pressure here in the Eastern Pacific, and this is 95E, which will probably develop and become a tropical system within the next few days. In fact, here's a satellite image of Invest 95E this morning. And you could certainly see, I guess, some convection blowing up off the coast of southern Mexico, although the low level center does seem to be somewhere right in here. So 95E not exactly super organized right now. And the real question with 95E will be how long does it take to develop? Because a lot of the models seem to want to have 95E take its slow, sweet time to develop, especially as we head into the weekend. And a lot of the models don't show 95V actually becoming a tropical depression or storm until we get to Sunday or Monday at the earliest. And that'll really have an impact on what happens in the Bay of Campeche, because if this develops quicker, it'll probably be able to establish outflow sooner. And that'll probably have a negative impact when it comes to shear in the Bay of Campeche and probably prevent whatever system we do have to develop really that much because of strong wind shear, and that's obviously not good for development of tropical systems. But especially if 95E continues to take its sweet time, I mean, it doesn't really look that organized now, although there is some shower and thunderstorm activity blowing up, especially as we head into the morning hours here. And I know that this satellite loop is kind of messy because there are a few images that are missing because GOES data, it says up here that GOES data is running behind, so that's why the satellite loop is a little bit choppy. But there are some showers and thunderstorms, at least within the last hour or so, beginning to fire up. Not still not very organized yet, and I'll show you here, at least in terms of the wind shear. There's decent wind shear or decently low wind shear in the Eastern Pacific, but certainly as to why this something that we will need to keep in mind, especially for the Bay of Campeche and the Atlantic. Still lots of very strong wind shear in place right now, especially through the Caribbean. In fact, portions of the Central and Eastern Caribbean, 50 to 60 knots of wind shear. That is very, very strong and certainly not favorable at all for tropical development. And that's why we are this is definitely something that we'll need to watch very closely over the next several days, especially once all of this moisture here that's right now in the Caribbean moves into the Gulf and the Bay of Campeche. And we'll also have to monitor the 850 millibar vorticity too. And you can see right now over the Yucatan Peninsula and over Central America, some vorticity right now. We'll see how much this makes its way into the Bay of Campeche, how much offshore this makes its way into, so it actually is able to develop and is not squashed over land and not able to consolidate much. And meanwhile, here in the Eastern Pacific, you could see the energy associated with 95E2. And once again, it's not really organized yet. There is some decent vorticity with it, but it is not concentrated. It's not wrapped up like a ball, like a tight, potent ball, like we would typically see with a tropical cyclone, especially on the 850 millibar vorticity. So it does still have a little bit more to go in terms of organization. And definitely how much time does it take to organize will have a huge impact. So let's see it all play out on the European model this morning, the 6E European model run. I would show you the GFS, but I do think it's still taking its time to load. So I'll show you the European as of right now. And going over the latest model run, you could see Saturday, we see this area here of vorticity that's over the Yucatan, or it's kind of multiple areas of vorticity. It's kind of this broad, low pressure with a lot of energy, moves off the Yucatan Peninsula. You can see it especially becomes pronounced early Saturday, and then moves offshore into the Bay of Campeche, and then automatically right away looks like some sort of surface low does try to develop, although it does kind of remain a little bit broad. But notice here, especially in the Eastern Pacific, 95E as of early Sunday, still not fully organized and very established, which that would be the positive aspect, especially for that would be a positive for the Bay of Campeche, especially because notice as we head into late Sunday, you notice the European especially consolidates the Bay of Campeche area pretty quickly, has a very it's like, I would say, borderline that it tries to develop and maybe becomes a quick spin up, but it certainly tries, and especially here as it's making landfall and coming ashore over Mexico, there's definitely probably a quite potent low pressure here, and definitely quite a bit of vorticity that does try to consolidate. It is a weak area, and of course, this is already inland by the time we get to, or already coming inland by the time we get to early Monday. In fact, 0Z Monday, so and that's actually late Sunday evening. This is already beginning to make its way inland. So, a huge issue with this storm that will probably prevent it from developing will be the time constraint. And then we're just going to have to watch to see just how much does Invest 95E develop as well this weekend, because you can see, at least on the European, definitely doesn't fully take off till Monday. And then eventually, as we head into early next week, you could see that 95E does develop, and definitely by the time we get to Monday and Tuesday, it's probably a full-blown tropical system. But I want to show you here, especially on the 200 millibar winds, which is the upper level winds in the atmosphere, because this would be very important to look at to see how the upper level winds are playing, especially in the Bay of Campeche. And you notice very light upper level winds over the Eastern Pacific, so that won't be an issue with Invest 95E. But you notice, especially as we head into late Sunday, there is a little bit of outflow here, or definitely low upper level winds, but we do not have an established outflow channel yet in the Pacific, because at this time, Invest 95E is only beginning to develop. So that means we won't have an established outflow channel that is directly shearing the Bay of Campeche, although there is a little bit of shear. And that will be something we have to watch as well, because this will have a very small time constraint, and this will also have to deal with potentially any outflow shear from the Pacific as well. And then you can kind of see conditions are definitely very marginal in the Bay of Campeche. So it really all comes down to how strong and how quickly does the Pacific develop, which will then have an impact on how much wind shear is brought into the Bay of Campeche, which will then negatively impact whatever does try to develop there. So that's one factor. But the other factor as well is sea surface temperatures, obviously, because you need very warm sea surface temperatures for things to be able to develop. And at least in the Bay of Campeche, they're definitely warm. I mean, the entire Gulf of Mexico and pretty much the entire Western Atlantic as we know it right now, definitely warm enough for development, especially the Northern Gulf here. Sea surface temperatures anywhere from 29 to 30, even 31 degrees Celsius as we get towards the shelf waters of the Northern Gulf. But even here in the Bay of Campeche, 28 to 29 degrees Celsius there. So definitely more than enough necessary for potential development. And in the Eastern Pacific as well, very warm, especially off the southern coast of Mexico, anywhere from 29 to 30 degrees Celsius there. So anything that does try to develop wind shear will certainly not be a factor, and the sea surface temperatures will certainly not be inhibiting whatever does happen in the Eastern Pacific. It's just a matter of, can it develop quickly enough to potentially shear the Bay of Campeche. But at least in terms of sea surface temperatures, Bay of Campeche, we won't have to worry about. And taking a look at that on the anomalies here, definitely slightly above normal in the Bay of Campeche. And I mean, yeah, it is above normal. It's definitely not like the Northern Gulf, where we truly have much above normal sea surface temperature anomalies there. And I mean, I just showed you we have 30, even 31s here up to the shelf waters of the Northern Gulf Coast, but still right where it should be to slightly above normal. And I mentioned this from time to time, the Gulf of Mexico will always be warm enough, especially as we get towards the peak of the hurricane season for development. It's just how the Gulf is, so wouldn't really put that much stock into the anomalies. While meanwhile, here in the Eastern Pacific, at least off the coast of Mexico, it is slightly above normal, so there's definitely warm enough sea surface temperatures there. But The issue is, especially as this heads further to the west-northwest, and that will probably be the case a lot this year in the Pacific, much below normal sea surface temperature anomalies there. And it generally just sets the pattern for things to not be as active in the Pacific, especially the further west and out to the open Pacific you go. So really going to have to depend on a lot of development closer to the Mexican coastline, and that's what we're getting, and that's what we really been getting when it comes to development so far. But at least throughout the Atlantic, and I mean even into the Eastern Atlantic, things are warm. The Caribbean is definitely warm. The Gulf of Mexico and even the Bay of Campeche, for the most part, slightly above normal. And this is a climatologically favored area that we look at, especially in the last third of June. Um, with tropical points of origin, you definitely see a lot of them in the Bay of Campeche. And of course, with the Pacific, you don't have to worry about whether or not it is anomalous, because we definitely have a lot of development in the last third months of June in the Pacific as well. So this is over climatologically favored areas. So the question will be is, will this be the storm that becomes Barry? We'll have to see. And that pretty much then goes back to the question of when will we see Barry form in the Atlantic. It's just a matter of wait and see. Especially with these quick spin ups, they can be very unpredictable. So we'll be monitoring over the next several days to see if this does end up indeed developing. And of course, we'll be monitoring Invest 95E in the Pacific as well. With that being said, I'm going to end it off for today's video. If you enjoyed what you saw today, please do not hesitate to like, comment, and subscribe, especially subscribe to my channel if you like information like this. And enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. Peace, love, and kindness to you all. I'll be back with more tomorrow.